Please share the screen.
Yes, yes, yes.
The...
I'm going to share screen now. Let me start one thing at a time before this goes mad, and then we have to restart the whole thing. Let me share. I'm going to share the sound, though it is not so important. So this lecture is about some stuff I've been working on in the last few years. It is a bit packed. There are several different things that you need to know, but if you don't follow every single detail, that doesn't matter. Don't worry too much about it. What I want is for you to follow the intuitions. So the aim of this talk is make you see how actually some of the generativists or some of people working on minimalism handle microvariation. And in particular, what this approach helps you dig out that you wouldn't be able to see on a normal surface observation of the facts. So there are some generalizations that come out only at a given level of abstraction. Now, the given level of abstraction is not so, wait a second, because I forgot that I have to, I'm not seeing now the admitting people that I have to let in. So let me see 1 second. What can I do to see them? Because I'm seeing you all now, and it's because of the recording. Probably I can't open. Yeah, I can now, but I have to see. No, I'm sharing the screen. Or am I sharing the screen or am I sharing the slides? The slides only, right?
The slides.
Right. So I do not know how to see the people that want to get in now, because I don't see that. Oh, here, participants. Okay, very well. I want to put on the screen, sorry, people who want to get in, because there are some people that are still coming in. Right. Okay. Sorry about this. Multitasking. Good. Right. So that's what I was going to tell you. So let's try to see how we handle microvariation and what we can see that other people cannot. Not other people. Other approaches don't allow you to see, as you'll see, because the general objection is, oh yes, but if you abstract away at a point, which is you're talking only about abstractions, of course, then you'll find generalizations, but you will see this is really not the case. It is rather straightforward. I hope that's what I want to show. But in the meantime, I want to show you a little bit how you do syntactic analysis and stuff like that. I'll try to slow down in points that are more, we don't need to finish this up, right? We can finish it in January. January, it's going to be completely different. In January, I'm going to talk about the project. So you'll see more of field work and how you organize a big project and how you handle contact data. This is really only syntax. Right. Some theoretical background notes, like you remember last time we left it there at the interface. I told you, I promised I would tell you this time what, what this interface means, what this means. So more or less the idea of the architecture of grammar that we've been working on in the last 30 years is the one that you see here. You basically fish out of the lexicon. We discussed the lexicon last time in the question time. So we discussed the lexicon, but let's imagine lexicon is a set of features and a set of roots, whatever you want to imagine the lexicon. You take items, you put them into syntax. Syntax is like, it's like a computing machine, basically. Syntax is something that has the only task to combine these elements into more complex elements and establish relations among these elements. Basically, build a structure with these primitive elements from the lexicon, put them into contact, and then spit out a complex expression that can be interpreted by PF, which is phonological form, which means the sensory motor, whatever has to do with sound, and LF, which is the logical form, which is whatever has to do with semantics, so meaning. So basically the idea is syntax is just a machine. It is a blind machine and it is a stupid machine, no offense. This means that syntax can't understand what they're doing, what syntax is doing. They can't, she or he or it can't understand. It just combines blindly things, which if you're blindly combining things and you don't really understand, this means that these things have to have specific information for this merging, for this putting together building structure to be possible. But the idea, so another model which has been proposed recently is this one. This is with workspaces, and this is nothing special. This just simply says that you assemble phrases in different workspaces, then you put them all together around a big spine. But the most important thing is that still you have a spell out moment. Spell out means that at that moment, your syntactic expression becomes visible at the interfaces. It becomes visible to the phonological, morphological component and to the semantic component. So as I told you, syntax is the structure, the basic architecture of sentences, and you always know. But I mean, of course, there are several other models. There's parallel grammars where you have things that go back and forth. There are several different models of having spell out. Here you see spell out by face. You can have spell out right as you merge. There are several different things. But what I want you to realize, what I want you to think, because we'll use it, is that basically syntax is a merge machine. It's a machine that puts things together. And then at some point, when everything has been done in the structure, this structure becomes, this complex expression has to become visible and readable from phonology and from semantics. These are other models. Other models, I mean, this is my pick. If you've looked at the little booklet on how to read trees, this is what you'll see. And you can see that I really can't draw. This is really a funny thing, but because I wanted to give you the idea, but I can't draw. But what I meant to do was, like, you have the lexicon, you put it into syntax. This is what happens in syntax. Imagine syntax is like a blind washing machine that does things, put things together. And at some point, these things are finished and then they become, well, we talk about spell out or transfer, which means that you move them into another component. In fact, you don't move anything anywhere. You can just, at some point, they become just readable and interpretable. That's all you have to do. So you spit it out. Giancarlo Schirru, can I see? Wow, sorry. Hello, good to see you. I've just seen a light now in my beautiful. So interfaces, please let me cover this because it is kind of embarrassing. I can't draw. You know, nobody's perfect. So this guy who looks like a terrorist is actually one of my co-authors. Is a very famous phonologist whose name is Tobias Scher, and we developed a model based on interface conditions. And this is something that you could, this makes you, we will use this, but more or less the idea of this is, it makes you visualize this on trees. Don't worry if you don't really follow, but basically the idea is you put two things together and then you spell them out. So you send them, this is syntax, this is PF, so the morphophonological component, you spell it out in bits and pieces. So you do not have the whole computation of a whole sentence at once. You do it in pieces. And we call these pieces, well, these are domains of computation. And these are defined in terms of phases. I'll tell you a little bit about this. This is not so important. What you see is this, that you don't have the whole, what you have to visualize here is that you do not spell out, you do not transfer the whole syntactic tree at once. You spell it out in bits and pieces. Now here there is a non-trivial assumption, which is your syntactic domain corresponds to a phonological domain. So basically here I'm assuming, which is absolutely not to be given for granted, that syntactic domains correspond one-to-one to prosodic domains. Notice that these are not phrases. So we know since Nespor and Vogel and others since the 80s, we know that syntactic phrases and prosodic phrases do not match, unfortunately. So you do not have a one-to-one correspondence. There is an algorithm needed. You need an algorithm of mapping. I can't tell you about this, but if you're interested in this mapping problem, you can read the paper I wrote with Tobias Scher in 2015 that's called Modular PIC. I mean, the name won't tell you anything, but this has a big summary of all possible theories of mapping between syntax and phonology. But this, what I wanted to tell you here is what I want. So from all this thing that looks so complicated, you need to remember you have lexicon, you put stuff in this blind machine executes orders. If you've ever done any computational linguistics, you know what it means that the machine is stupid. I worked in the beginning of my career, I worked for Microsoft, that machine translation. So I was there in charge of machine translator software together with a computationalist, of course. And the first class I was told was, if everything freezes, turn off the machine. This was the first thing I got in the training at Redmond in Microsoft at Seattle. That's the first thing. The second lecture I got, which is probably more new to you, is a machine does what you tell it to do. It doesn't do what you want it to do. So orders have to be clear. Now, if you think of syntax as a machine, as a computational device, syntax has to know what it has to do. Instructions must be there because syntax does not understand, oh, this is an animate noun, then I have to mark it. No, it has to be written somewhere, okay? Now, we go to our strong minimalist thesis just to recall it, and then I present the problems that I would like to tell you about today. Remember the strong minimalist thesis, we discussed this last time. Language is an optimal solution to legibility conditions. This, what does it mean? Remember, optimal, not perfect. Remember what is optimal. And in this case, we want to map language with syntax. Basically, what this is saying is your syntax is the best you can get, given what PF and LF want. So given the semantic constraints and the phonological constraints on sentences, on what you can actually, I'm not talking about phonetics, huh? I'm not talking about, because phonetics constraints, these are already incorporated in the lexicon. I'm talking about phonological rules. Phonological rules and semantic rules constrain your syntax. So the best you can do is the syntax. And we need to figure out, remember, how the syntax looks like to be legible at the interfaces. Remember that, okay, there's something in the chat. Wait a second. Let me, I don't know how to read the chat. But can you see anything? Can you see what's written there? Because now I don't want to touch the screen. I'm afraid everything crashes. I've seen that something is in the chat. So if there is some kind of feedback, that can you still hear me well, or? Okay.
There's nothing in the chat.
L'accesso varie volte dove okay. This now. Okay, if you please use the chat at the moment, just to ask me questions related to this, and then I'll tell you everything about where you can find the recordings and everything. You will know this. Don't worry, we're recording. By the way, for the people that have come in later, if you don't want your beautiful face to appear on the web, don't show it. Keep your camera off. Okay, strong minimalist thesis. The output of narrow syntactic operations must be readable, fully interpretable at the interface. So this means, imagine, you can imagine and visualize LF and PF interfaces like the custom. You have to go through the custom. You are in syntax, you have to go through the custom. And what you need to go through the custom to get access to another country, you need your passport. Your passport must be readable to the other country. So if you have a passport which is written in characters that normally we use English password, with English characters. Why? Because the interface, the other side, must be able to read it. If the other side can't read it, normally, I do it with a door, actually, when I can do it in class. You try to get out of the door, which is a metaphor, of course, but if you don't have your documents right to pass, you're not going to be readable. What happens if your semantics and phonology can't read you? Well, the derivation crashes. So your syntactic expression crashes. It is unreadable. Okay, so now how you ensure that syntax doesn't crash, how serious you take these interface conditions. Well, this is it's an entire course. We can't go through it, but this is important. It is important to think of legibility. This is the same as I told, it's the same slide. Remember the minimalist method. You have to postulate as little as possible. And this is really crucial for the question, the theoretical problem I want to present to you, because I'm going to show you there's a theoretical problem, which is, so the theory predicts something, which the data disconfirm. So how do we solve this? This is what we're going to see today. So basically, you need to postulate only what is strictly conceptually necessary. So if you don't have a reason to postulate something, reason being mostly empirical or conceptual, in the sense that your system must predict that, you can't postulate, okay? And also, you can't introduce new things in the syntax. Everything has to already be present. You can't start introducing indices, co-references, traces, and all sorts of stuff. Especially eliminate from narrow syntax everything that is not readable at the interface. And this is because you want your derivation to converge. This is the technical way we say that your sentence must be readable. Your derivation must converge. Now, a last little bit of information, and then we go to the fact. I mean, the first part of the class is very abstract theoretical, and you will see, oh, what is this? But I think it's better to have the theory in the beginning than at the end when you're already tired. The second part is only data, and data taken from Italo-Romance varieties, dialects, etc. So you will then see, yes, I know this one. Okay, so don't worry. Bear with me. Strong minimalist thesis. Occam's razor for the methodology, 5 features. What are 5 features? Well, features are only they're not a big issue, a big topic. I actually give something like 6 classes on features. So that's a lot. But for now, what is a feature? Basically, you can think of a feature as everything a class of lexical items shares. For instance, if I say in Italian, tavola, mamma, Roberta, sedia, all these nouns, they're on the same set and they all share feminine gender. Okay, think of a feature like some sort of a tag of a set, which is the tag that corresponds to what all the elements in the set share. These features were thought, were first, I mean, they've been going on for a lot, but Jacobson, for instance, was the first one who actually actively used features for phonological operations. This is phonology. Basically, if you want to know what consonants a rule applies to, you have to target a set of consonants. You have to give features corresponding to these consonants. You have to say, okay, all laterals have to undergo sandhi. This is a completely invented, but lateral is a feature. Okay, more or less think of features like this. Now, features is what we usually think when we talk about in traditional grammar, inflection. So o in Spanish, which is the same as Italian, is the first person singular present indicative. And that's it. If you have o, these things are called features technically. So first person, singular, present, these are all features. These are all, whatever ends in O in Spanish, every single verb that ends in O will have that, right? Now, 5 features in particular, we call 5 features these ones, the ones that undergo agreement. And you need to understand this definition, because this will be crucial for the rest of the talk. 5 features are first singular. So whatever is involved in agreement with the subject, these are called 5 features. And the rest are verbal features. Okay, 5 features. When I talk about 5 features, I talk about person, gender, and number. And maybe case, but we don't talk about case today. And we don't even know what case exactly is. Okay? First, person, gender, number, that's more than enough for you to remember. Now, interpretability is another important concept. Interpretability has to do with the interfaces. You see, everything comes back and then we're ready. Interpretability is something that you need to be legible at the interfaces. This means that normally interpretability is established on the basis of semantics, not on the basis of phonology. It is possibly wrong, because it should be both interfaces, but it is basically, that's how we work. So if a feature is not interpretable by semantics, you need to get rid of it. You need to get rid of it during syntax. So what the system I will use here is a system there are thousands of ways to do the get rid or make sure that the feature is interpretable. What I will do today, the system I'll use today, is a system of valuation. Basically, I will assume that if you hit the interface, LF interface with semantics, and your features don't have a value, the derivation crashes. What does it mean it doesn't have a value? For instance, I know that I have to have a person feature. I am a verb. I need a person inflection. If I don't find any subject to agree with, and I don't have any person inflection, then the derivation crashes. I need to have a value for this person. Now, it could be the subject. In Italian, it could be a default when you don't have, when you have, say, weather verbs, etc. But you need to have a value. If you don't have a value, if you know I'm person, but what person? First person, second person, third person, I don't know. If I don't have a value, my derivation will crash. That's the assumption, very simple. Now, how do you know if a feature is interpretable at the interface or not interpretable at the interface? For instance, do you think that number is interpretable? What do you think? One of you who wants to answer, do you think that the number feature, is it interpretable at the interface? Anybody? Shall I call names? Possibly not. It is much better if you try to give an answer. Just to see if you, well, this is a yes-no question. Perhaps. So what do you think? Do you think number is interpretable? Do you think the number feature is interpretable at the interface with semantics? For instance, let me call somebody who I know will not be scared. I see only half of the names here, though. For instance, Guglielmo. Are you still there, Guglielmo?
Yes, I am.
I think you know the answer, but anyway, do you think number is interpretable or not?
Well, it should be on nouns.
Bravo.
Right?
Stop there. He knows the answer, of course. What does he say? He's saying, thanks, Guglielmo. I don't want to, I just wanted to. This makes no sense. This question that I asked you makes no sense. And in fact, Guglielmo, who is a smart guy, thought, what does it mean? Because it depends where this feature is. So a feature is interpretable on nouns. Remember last time we mentioned a number feature is interpretable on nouns. Last time, remember, I told you about plurality. If I see a plural noun, more or less a noun which is plural, I'm like, well, not disregarding exceptions. If I say one telephone, two telephones, if I put the plural inflection, this means that there's two objects, three objects, more objects. It's a plurality of objects, which means that the semantics of number is interpretable at the interface with at the interface with Aleph The semantics, the number is interpretable, or nouns, which means it is simply compositional. It is a noun. I add a plurality. It means a plurality of nouns. But for verbs, number is not interpretable, because if I say they go, well, in English you don't really say, but in Italian, vanno or andiamo, you have a plural ending, but this is not a plurality of events. This doesn't mean that there are more events of going. This means that the subject of this verb is plural. There's an agreement in 5 features between a plural subject and the verb, but it doesn't mean, so it is not directly compositional. You don't have the event of going and you put the plural and it means many events of going, right? That would happen, for instance, with the prefix riandiamo. This means we go again, but this is, I mean, you have a second event. But plurality on verbs is not interpretable. So verbs have their 5 features, and these 5 features are unvalued and therefore uninterpretable. They don't have any value, and they get a value, let's say more or less from their subject usually. The moment they get the value, now this is something that is a bit not straightforward, but I can't go there because it's too long. So you just have to take my words for this. The moment they get the value, they can go through the interface. So for the assumption we have today, if you have a value, you are interpretable. But we know at least that when you come from the lexicon, verbs have the features, the number features are unvalued on verbs, and they are valued on nouns. Basically, this means that when you have a verb and you merge your verb will still need to agree with something. Now I'm talking about verb. This is a bit of, so the syntacticians among you, please don't frown. This is just intuitively how I want to make you understand this. More or less, do you see the point? If you have your features, you're happy and you can go through the interface. If you are a noun, you will be plural before or after you agree. You will still be plural. It is not that if I agree with the verb, then I become singular if I'm a noun. The verb, if you are a verb, you will change your number depending on your subject. Okay, you will need to agree. And that's the basic understanding of agreement facts. Okay? I hope, is this absolutely incomprehensible, or can you get the intuition? Can you follow the intuitions? I don't see your face. I only see Michela. Michela, can
Sorry,
you
I have,
No, it's clear.
Yes, a question.
yeah, what about gender?
Who is
Gender
talking,
is
please?
Domenico.
Domenico, yes, Domenico, please.
What about gender? Gender, we can interpretable this.
That's an excellent question that I will not answer, because when gender is a problem, and you are very good and spot on the fact that gender behaves very differently from person and number. To start with, because verbs don't all encode gender, so you don't really need gender. In Italian, let's say that nouns have interpretable gender, but that's as far as I will go for now, because otherwise we open a whole new chapter that I can't go in. But
Okay.
Good, spot on. You are right. You're precisely good, right when you say, okay, gender, because we have gender on participles, but not on finite verbs in Italian, and then Russian has it. It's a parametric thing. If you allow me, I will just a little bit go on, because otherwise, yes, in some number, yes, Artemi. Hi, by the way, good to see you. At least I don't see you, but good that you're here. But indeed, yes, but the thing is, I'm giving you,
Teacher.
so Artemi is saying,
Teacher, sorry, I have a question.
Please.
Yes, I would like to know if we say, for example, in Italian,
Yeah.
Maria è nata.
Yeah.
In this case, the gender is interpretable.
On Maria, yes. Nata, basically, you will have to know who is born. So if you say Maria è nata, Maria è morta, Maria è andata, Maria vive, Maria whatever, Maria is always Maria. So Maria will not change gender during the derivation. But nata will depend on who. So if you say Mario, then you cannot have nata. You have to have nato. So nato, so the gender on the past participle is not interpretable until it agrees with the subject, right? That's what
Okay, thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you very
Yes.
much. So there was an objection. Well, this is please. We can this takes really at least 6 classes. I have an entire course on agreement if you're interested in 13 installments. So it is oversimplified in everything I say. I just want to give you the intuition because I need to use some of these tools, and then otherwise you have no idea what I'm doing. But yes, there are exceptions. Yes, it is not precise. Yes, I know. Just trust me that this is all you need to know for now. If we go into this now, we're never going to go to Napolitan. So let's get going, okay? Yeah, let's get going. But thanks for your questions. It means you're not asleep, which makes me happy because now I'm going to tell you something which is more sci-fi than syntax. So this part is some part of my work. And this shows you more or less what happens when your theory makes a prediction that is contradicted by the data. So phi heads are a problem for legibility conditions. In particular, heads that are just a set of unvalued features. Imagine you have a set of features that have no value and that need to be valued by something else, but by themselves, they don't have a value. Now, these kinds of features, these kinds of heads were postulated in government and binding. There was the agar head, which was the head basically in which you have to move to agree to create subject verb agreement. Now, this is Chomsky. T, C, and D, these are functional heads, tense, complementation, and definiteness, and agr. Basically, Chomsky is saying tense is interpretable. Complementation is interpretable. They have some semantics. Definiteness is interpretable. They have some semantics. You know, definite means something different from indefinite. And then you have agr. Agr, what was agr? Agr is a bundle of features. Basically, it is unvalued gender, unvalued number, unvalued person. If you're unvalued, you're by definition uninterpretable. And if you are uninterpretable, you need to get interpretation, okay, but I'm postulating a head that basically doesn't exist. It is not fine for the system to postulate a head which we never see. That's what Chomsky says. So we've lived for 20 years using a head that we never see because we don't see any semantics. So we don't see any object like this. So since this is not strictly conceptually necessary, we have to get rid of this head. In other words, the minimalist program says you can't have heads that have absolutely no semantics at all, because you need to have at least one bit of semantics in order to have a head, in order to formulate a head. I mean, the way I said it is a bit, again, cutting edges, but it's okay. More or less understand that, I want you to understand that a head which is not visible and it doesn't have, only has uninterpretable features without any interpretable feature cannot be postulated, okay? That's conceptually wrong. So we removed the head, agr, which we worked on for the whole government and binding. These heads do not bring any semantic context, they cannot exist. So that's Chomsky's solution. Eliminate. We do not have them. Okay. Now, I don't know if you know this, but okay. If you don't, doesn't matter. Exterminate is Chomsky's solution. We remove these. Interestingly, this happens between 2 chapters of the same book. So in chapter 3 of the minimalist program, you have a beautiful explanation of why this is useful. On chapter 4, Chomsky says, no, sorry. this is completely wrong. You don't use it. So that's some sort of interesting way of presenting things. Anyway, now what I'm going to tell you for the rest of this lecture, if I manage, or at least the part I can tell you. First, the theoretical issues. Can we have this phi? Do we have it? Heads that are only clusters or bundles of features. Do you have that, and how? Where is this? Well, the answer will be okay, yes. And then I will tell you about clitics, dialectics, person-driven auxiliaries. I removed rafforzamento because that's too long. And I think I will also remove dialectics because that's too long. Let's see where we are. I'll tell you about all these elements, and I'll tell you how these show that the theory is wrong. So we need to change it and what we can do to change it. And then some conclusions if we get there, but I don't think so. Anyway, phi or no phi? Can you have a head which is only made of 5 features that are unvalued? So unvalued number, unvalued gender, unvalued person, and that's it. Chomsky says, no, we don't do it because it is conceptually not necessary, and we're working with Occam's razor. Empirical evidence, though, comes from Italo-Romance varieties saying that these heads actually exist. Can you think of what these heads are? I've already given you a screenshot before. Can you think of elements that have nothing but agreement and they are heads on their own? Nothing but agreement. If you are from the north of Italy, you will have heard and used subject clitics. Subject clitics are very often not pronominal. They do not have any semantics. They just are a copy of the features of the subject. So these elements, well, we can say that they don't exist, but they do. We do have them. So what do we do with them? You have to find an alternative solution because actually, yes, the theory says you can't have them and it predicts you don't have them, but in fact you do. So the theory is wrong. Because remember, despite whatever they've always told you about generative grammar, every generalization is empirically based. The data are always right. You can change the interpretation of the data, you can analyze them in different ways, but if the data contradict the theory, of course, you have to see whether there are exceptions, etc. But the data is what counts. We're not going to change all Northern Italian dialects, and I'll call them dialects for a shorthand, because otherwise I have to say Italo-Romance, varieties, blah, blah, takes forever. We're not going to change the fact and eliminate clitics because Chomsky doesn't like them, okay? Remember this. Now, subject clitics in Northern Italian varieties. La Maria, La Magna. Excuse me if there is any Veneton around listening. Oh, there is one. There is Alberto, at least one. You will forgive my pronunciation because, of course, I'm a speaker of a Southern variety and it sounds very, my Veneton sounds very bad. But what I want you to see is you have the subject and then you have a subject clitic. What is the subject clitic doing here? Nothing. It is doing nothing. It has no semantics. It has no semantics. It doesn't, this is not a dislocation. This is a normal sentence. It's a sentence that in Italian would sound Maria mangia. You don't need to have a la. It is there, but you don't need it. It has no semantics. It is a bundle of features. The features are exactly the same as those of the subject. So this la enters the derivation as a bundle of unvalued features, which shouldn't exist, but it does. Here you see same in inversion. This is a clitic doubling construction in Spanish, which is not the same as clitic left dislocation in our Italo-Romance varieties, because clitic left dislocation is some sort of, it is more or less the same thing, but it is doubling a topic. So some people say this could be a topic marker, but in this case, you have nothing. This is really just like a subject clitic. You just repeat the object and that's it, right? So these elements exist. Now, they don't convey semantic information. Most Northern Italian subject clitics are not pronominal. There have been tests. There are a lot of tests to distinguish whether these are full pronouns, the French way, or they're just agreement elements. Rizzi has a set of tests. Poletto has taken them back. Basically, we know that agreement markers have a specific distribution, and pronouns have another one. Also very well, one thing you can think when you have a conjuncts, of coordinate, if you have a coordinate sentence, yeah, subject clitics must appear on both conjuncts. Pronouns mustn't. In fact, if you think of English has only pronouns. Of course, it doesn't have subject clitics. So if you want to say if you have a coordinate sentence with the same subject, you can say I eat and drink. That's the only context in which you can drop the subject in English. I eat and drink. Mary eats and drinks, right? Same in French. If you have coordinate subjects, the second subject can be dropped if it is a pronoun. If it is a subject clitic, you have to say it again. So you have to say something like la magna e la beve or something like that. La and la. It has to be repeated because it is an inflectional element. It is not a full pronoun. We can talk about this more, but let's go with this assumption. Basically, these Northern Italian varieties have some extra 5 features that are not in other varieties. Now, we'll tell you where these are. What do we do? How can we include them in the theory that says you have to have at least one semantic feature to be able to exist in your lexicon? Well, one way to solve this is to say whether they are one head or another. We will tell. One way to solve this is to postulate this condition, which was a tentative condition I postulated, and basically is to say, well, okay, you can exist, you can enter the derivation without any value. You can be a set of features that need agreement. But before the derivation is complete, you must dock on an element with semantic content. So basically, you can enter the derivation, you can enter your syntax in whichever form you want. But before you hit the interfaces, you must be part of an item that has semantic interpretation. In other words, you must criticize. So basically, criticization is there not because these elements are reduced, not only because these elements are reduced and they're weak and they have to lean on another platform phonologically. No, criticization is syntactically necessary for these items to be able to hit the interface on an item which has semantic content, which doesn't mean, I know that you're confused and you thought, okay, you said if something is valued, then it can be interpretable, but let's think of semantics like real semantic content. That's what we're talking about, not 5-feature valuation. Valuation only is not enough, but if you dock onto an element that has some semantic content, then you can cross the interface. And this means that you need to criticize. Criticization is necessary for these elements, all right? Now, criticization is conceptually necessary for full interpretation. Now, the terminology you need to hear here is what am I going to tell you for the rest of the talk? So in case you want to go for a shower or coffee, you can do it. First, there is an extra probe. What is a probe? A probe is what I called you. So today I called a bundle of uninterpretable features. This is a probe. Basically, the idea is in Italo-Romance, not only Northern, but also Southern varieties, we will see how, the lexicon has this extra bundle of unvalued features. I call it pi from person, but doesn't matter. Pi, pi greco. This pi is an extra pi, which is present in all Italo-Romance varieties. So you can tell that one typological feature of Italo-Romance is this existence of this extra feature bundle. Now, if you have a bundle of features that has no category, that has nothing, it has just no values, where do you attach it? It is not, I mean, syntax is blind. We said it before. You attach things, you have selection. So if you know that something is pronominal, that has, we say, an n feature, it has a nominal feature, then it can be selected by verb. But if this guy doesn't have any semantics, how do you select it? Where do you put it? You see the problem. This is a conceptual problem is there because if you have something with no category, no semantic content, where do you put it? Where do you put it? So the last bit of theory that I'll try to show you, and my idea is that the docking side depends on it is a choice that languages make. Let's say you have this extra element, it's present everywhere. But if you're a Northern language, you will dock it to the verbal field upstairs, the T field, and it will become a subject clitic. If you are a Southern language, you will dock it somewhere in the big V field, it's called for. So you will dock it around the object, and you will have person-driven differential object marking, for instance, or agreeing adverbs, or all sorts of things. But you see it over and over and over and over again. You see this extra bundle of features appearing everywhere. So that's what makes us one big language group. North and South Italo-Romance, this is a big typological feature that was completely because Northern languages have subject clitics, Southern languages accidentally have person-driven auxiliary selection. That's an accident. No, that's not. This is exactly the same element merging in different sides. It's beautiful, I think. But anyway, that's because I like it. But anyway, so basically each Italo-Romance variety decides where to dock this thing, where to merge it, how to incorporate it, but it is there in the lexicon. It can be merged as an agreement ending. It can be merged in the stem of a word. In particular, it can be merged in agreeing adverbs that are also something that is very unusual, but it is found in Italo-Romance. It can be merged as the word stem itself, as the auxiliary stem. I'll tell you, this is something that Michela worked on, and in fact, I'm using most of her data for this. It can be merged, everywhere, you see. So all I'm going to try to show you from now on, if you've survived, is where we put this pie. So far we started, just for you to be on the same page as I, more or less to all be on the same page. We started with the interface conditions. Remember, something has to be readable at the interface. Then I skipped over many parts, and I told you that basically you can't postulate something which doesn't have any semantic import. It needs to exist. So the theory predicts that you can't actually merge. You can't add. You can't have these elements that are purely. They're pure probes, it's called, so purely uninterpretable elements. But we saw that, in fact, subject clitics are really so visibly, so clearly just pure agreement elements. So they can exist, and they do exist. And so I'm telling you, well, my idea is that these are not just there, they are everywhere in Italo-Romance, and you can see these extra bits of agreement coming up, popping up everywhere if you look for them. So there is something, it is there, and it must be postulated because it exists. Okay, so at this point, we're going into the empirical issues that I promised. And I don't know, since it is 10, we might have a 5-minute break, maybe, if you want to, or just go on and finish earlier and leave some place for questions. I'd rather go on because I want to cover at least a couple of these, and then you can leave. So at least you can hear everything if you're still hearing, and then leave for the question period if you're not interested anymore. What do you think? Michela, what do you think?
Yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
would go on,
Go on.
but I mean,
Yes,
yes.
Domenico, were you also talking, saying something?
No, sorry. No.
Okay.
For
All
me,
right,
it's
so
okay.
we go on, and okay, I'll tell you about some empirical issues. Where is pi? Pi is the shorthand for this bundle of unvalued features that shouldn't be present, but they are, etc. Okay, I told you they're everywhere in Italo-Romance. So basically what happens is there are several ways to go. This is a parametric approach, microparametric approach to this. But parametric means that languages make a choice. And the choice is, okay, is this element present in the lexicon? Do you have this or not? If not, you're not Italo-Romance, we don't care about you. If yes, can you incorporate it somewhere? Can you make it part of a lexical item, like a word? If it is possible, well, you incorporate it into a suitable host. And this is something I'll tell you. These are person or person pronouns with a specification for deixis. So when we say in Abruzzese "cus tu," this doesn't mean he, it means he next to me. So this could be it. And then if you can't incorporate it on a lexical item or adverbs, etc., agreeing adverbs, here, this way, we say accusi, this way, but that way is allusi, and this is really, you have it in the lexical item. If you can't, you have to ask yourself whether you can merge it in the VP. Well, I hope you did read a little bit of the how to read a syntactic tree. Otherwise, you have to think, okay, this means, can you merge it downstairs, like near the object of a transitive verb? Yes, if you can, then you have person-driven differential object marking. All these person-driven elements, all the fact that we keep on expressing the person everywhere in clitic doubling, in adverbs, on pronouns, in differential object marking. This is not accidental. This is pi surfacing in our syntax, right? This cannot be merged with TP. This means it is higher up, closer to the subject, and this is subject clitics. And this is, this is a notation that dialectologists use it is Upper Southern Italian dialects. NIDS is Northern Italian dialects. Of course, I know these are no dialects. Don't tell me we don't want to start a fight here. I know, but this is a shorthand. Otherwise, it takes forever, okay? So now this is the idea. You have these things and you surface, you see them everywhere in the derivation. This is not implicational hierarchy. You don't say, okay, if you start here, then you can't have that. In fact, you can see things surfacing more than once. In fact, you can have, you see usage here, you see it twice, because in many of these varieties, Upper Southern varieties, including Abruzzese, which is my own, you can see it in a person-marked differential object marking, you can see it in person pronouns, person-oriented, deictically specified pronouns, you can see it everywhere. So basically, you have one element, imagine you have one element, and this is a problem, and then we will go to the real data so you see what I mean, but you have an element, imagine you have this pi, this is a bundle of unvalued features. You could decide to have it once, you merge it, because it doesn't have a category, a language has to decide where to merge them. So the Northern Italian dialects, they say, okay, we merge it upstairs, near the subject, so it will be closer to the subject, it will agree with the subject, you will see the subject clitic. Southern Italian dialects say, okay, we merge it close to the object. We have person-driven differential object marking, or definiteness, etc., differential object marking, but person-driven differential object marking. But actually, in fact, sometimes you see the surfacing more than once. In particular, in Abruzzese, you have split auxiliary selection, depending on person. You have split differential object marking. You have a lot of person-oriented pronouns, etc. So you'd see it more than once. So how do you say it? You can simply say, okay, you have more than one pi in the lexicon. That's fine. You can merge it and remerge it. In fact, you are merging features. Merging features is costless. So you can have it. Or you can have something like this. And this is really sci-fi. This is something I've been thinking on for a long time. And I think I want to develop this at some point. Basically, I don't know if you know autosegmental phonology. Some of you will have heard of it. Probably since you know phonology, most of you know autosegmental phonology. And autosegmental phonology works more or less like this. The easiest way to go is to say, imagine gemination in Italian. You have papa and you have pappa. How do you derive this? Well, basically, the idea is you have the melody, it is one tier, but then you have you have basically your prosodic tier that has connection lines that are different from, so you have basically, it is, imagine if you have one line and then you have connections on another line which connects to, you have another plane, let's say, that connects differently, that has, so for instance, imagine the segment here, this mora basically has two moras are connected to the same segment in papa, but these other two moras are connected to the same vowel in papa because a is longer, right? So these are, let's say, units of time, and the units of time connect in different measures to the melody tier, right? More or less, just for the intuition, right? Okay, it doesn't matter if you don't know autosegmental phonology or you don't like this. The idea is basically, let's think of semantics, a syntax. You have one line item which connects to more than one. So you basically have a pointer to this item, and this item connects, is on a different plane. Maybe it's pair merged. I don't know if any of you knows what pair merge is. If you don't, leave it. If you do, maybe this is the other plane. This is the outer plane. This is the outer syntax. And it is merged and attached to several places. Now, this is not so important for what the rest I have to tell you. This is just my speculation on how you formally manage to merge and remerge the same element more than one in several different venues, in several different places in syntax. Okay, it could be that syntax is not linear. There is not just the spine, but there are other planes that are read, for instance, by prosody. I have papers on this. If you're interested, I have a paper with Mark van Oostendorp, who's a phonologist and also happens to be my closest collaborator, like Alexander Nicolai would say, and husband. But anyway, there's a paper on that, on different tiers of syntax. You can read that. I'll tell you if you want to know. Okay, this is one possible way to implement this, but let's go back to the normal side, the possible merger. So we have this floating pi. This floating means that you have it in the lexicon, you don't know where to merge it because it doesn't have a category, it doesn't have semantics, you don't know where to go, you don't know how to select it. So Teresa Biberauer will say, merge it in the edge of the face. I say, well, no, you can see it merged in different sites, and you can see it represented differently. Basically, you have this pi, and it has to incorporate before spell out, for what we said, for interpretability. Where do you put it? Well, it depends on the language. Now, I give you this, leave this. We've done this. Oh, basically, this is what I already told you. And I'll tell you now that you see the data, this will become more obvious, I hope. This is more than one thing, okay. We can have more than one pi, or we can have the same pi linked to two merge positions. And this is the autosegmental bit that I told you. We skip over and we start with data. You needed some background, okay? Are you still with me mostly? Has anybody fainted so far? Well, if you fainted, you're not going to talk. But if you more or less, are you still with me? We start with data now, right? Okay. No answer means yes. You're still with me. I don't know. There's a chat. Okay, somebody in the chat who answered, yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you. That's important for me. Okay, now let's look at the data. This was all the part of how do you handle the fact that you see some evidence. Now, we said this pi is basically a bundle of features. I told you that subject clitics in Northern Italian varieties are basically bundles of unvalued features. They are not pronominal. They do not have any nominal element. They are just features. They just agree. And so basically, this is the same example as before. The subject clitic simply agrees with the subject. What does this mean? Oh, now, an interesting parallel is to, and this is in the paper I wrote in 2017, I think for Glossa, Southern Italian dialects have something weird on which Michela has worked extensively, and these are person-oriented auxiliaries. So most of you are familiar with this because most of you are Italian, so they've known some sort of Italian dialectology. What happens in these varieties, including mine, this is Abruzzese, this is my own variety. You select the auxiliary to form the present perfect depending on the subject. So first, these languages have two possible auxiliaries to form the present perfect. One is be and another one is have, like German, like Dutch, like French. But the distribution of these auxiliaries is totally independent of argument structure. So it is not the case that if you have a transitive verb, you have, and if you have an unaccusative verb, a verb of motion, a change of state verb, you have be. That's the normal, this is more or less what happens in languages with auxiliary selection. In these varieties, your auxiliary depends on the subject. If your subject is first person or second person, the auxiliary will be be. If your subject is third person, your auxiliary will be have. In the singular and in the plural, all the same. So you would say, I am eaten. You are eaten. He has eaten. We are eaten. You are eaten. They have eaten. For every single verb. Change of states, unaccusatives, unergatives, transitives, any verb works like this. So argument structure, the structure of the verb, kind of number of arguments completely doesn't matter. This is the most regular. There are many others. You see them in the paper if you want to read them. They have been described in details by Michela, and they all depend. I mean, sometimes you have only one person, first person, as opposed to everything else, only in the unacusatives, etc. They depend on several factors, geographical factors, but also usage factors, and also social strata. There's a huge variation. So I'm taking this as an example to exemplify the idea, right? Okay, so basically in the north, you have bundles of features and you see them because it is subject clitics in the form of subject clitics. In the south, you have bundles of features and you see them as parts of the roots of the auxiliary. You say, well, this is a normal auxiliary. How is this so different from Italian so? Well, look at this. This is a pattern of auxiliary of subject clitics. This is a first or second subject clitic. Then you have a second singular subject clitic. Then you have a third singular subject clitic. Then you have, again, first and second. Then you have third plural. Now, if you analyze so, what is so? The O is the same O of Spanish, of Italian, and everything. The O is the ending, and it means first singular. Just like in Italian, sono, that's O. Mangio, that's O. Okay, sono is a bit different because it is in regular form, but mangio, guardo, O, first singular. But the fact that you select an S, so the B root, this tells you that you have a first or second person subject. So the B root encodes person. So the extra bundle here, is it only in the form of person? Okay, you don't see the number difference, not so much. I mean, you see it, you have to combine, but I want you to have the intuition. The root conveys an extra 5 feature, an extra feature bundle. The root depends on the subject. The root agrees with the subject. The root means the auxiliary, the verb, the basis of the auxiliary depends on the subject. And the ending, the inflection, also depends on the subject. So as you can see, you have a doubling structure. You have the same information repeated twice. And in particular, this, the root, agreeing root that says, okay, if I am singular first, if I have a first person subject, then I will be first person. This is pi. This is pi. This, because there's no other read. This is just a root. This is an auxiliary root. It means nothing. But then it is combined to the meaning of present tense, etc. But the present tense and everything is in the ending. The fact that the root depends and agrees with the subject, this is pi. This is the bundle of features, extra bundle of features that you see and you don't have anywhere else. Now, basically the idea is in the north, you see this bundle of features realized as subject clitics. In the south, you see it as person-oriented auxiliary roots. Basically, it is the same element. It's everywhere. It is, I mean, I checked, it's on the paper, I checked the distribution, I checked the fact that most of the times you really have either or. You can have some doublings, but more or less the distribution is either you have this or you have that, which means that you realize it. Structurally, it's very simple. Either you realize it upstairs or downstairs, either close to the subject or closer to the verb. No, that's confusing. Leave it, because the auxiliary also agrees with the subject. So leave this thing, because the thing of the verb comes later. Sorry, forget about the last thing I told you. This is just geographical distribution. North and south decide differently how to handle this extra bundle, but it's there. Now, third person pronouns. These are a bit more complicated. As I told you, in Abruzzese, but I think also in Napolitan, etc., you cannot say he simply. Well, you have the form that you use in reported speech, which is es. But if you want to say he did this, you have to say, especially if you're talking to someone and somebody's present, you have to say, well, also not present. Basically, es is really very marked. If you want to say he, you have to specify where this he is, or she. You have to say if she is next to me, next to the addressee, or far from both. So you don't say I saw, I'm talking to this guy, I'm talking to him. You have to say I'm talking to him next to you, or I'm talking to him far from both, if this him is not present, or I'm talking to him next to me. So it is some sort of ostension, but it is not ostension. It is really encoded in the morphology. Now, the first thing we need to think about, and I'm going to tell you this quickly because this also takes a lot more and I can't do it now, is that deixis and person, grammatical person, are not the same thing. So I am now cutting it short and assuming that this pi encodes deixis. And this is just because of simplification. I'm well aware that person and referent are two different things. Syntactic person, grammatical, morphological person. I mean, this is Benveniste already. I mean, we always think of Benveniste that says, oh, third person is no person. Benveniste says many other very interesting things about pronouns. So go and read him if you want. One of the things that he says clearly is that, think about this. In the South, if you talk to someone, you say, voi siete molto simpatico. Voi is plural. The referent is one. So one thing is the voi siete, which is syntactically plural. One thing is the referent, which is one person. If you say voi siete simpatica, simpatica is singular. So if it was syntactic, you would have to say voi siete simpatici. this is not, I mean, voi siete is syntactically plural, but referentially singular. So it is not the same. Syntactic person and referent are two different things, and deixis refers to reference, and these are two different things. But for now, please know that there is a solution. Let me make this, have this assumption. Now, if we think of third person, okay, first person, let's think that's the speaker. Second person is the addressee, okay. Third person is not neither. It is neither me nor you. That's the simplified way. Now, if we think of third person is the absence of person. Basically, third person is usually defined as neither me nor you, someone else. Okay. The characteristics of third person are listed here in a dissertation by Bettina Gruber. And basically, Bettina says third person pronouns do not refer to speech act or participant. Third person is really the absence of person. Third person pronoun needs to be introduced. They require a discourse antecedent or an ostensive act. Third person reference depends on the context. Once introduced, the reference doesn't change. They can refer to both sentient and non-sentient individuals. So third person are really different, and we know it. And if you worked in syntax or morphology, you know immediately that third person is a really difficult one, because first and second is much more straightforward. Third is a problem. But third person, crucially, does not refer to a speech act participant in general. But what I just told you, leave Spanish. What I just told you is that, it's here. Here. What I just told you is that in this variety, you have third person referring to a speech act participant. You have third person plus coding of you and I. Kush tu means third person close to me, the speaker. The speaker is encoded in this third person. Now, since you've been following very carefully, you know where I'm headed. This referring to I is actually our pi. But anyway, because, you see, if you start looking at these dialects, all these dialects in a systematic way, you see this extra information popping up all the time. You say, why are they saying these things? Italian doesn't use this. Italian is, of course, the reference language. Italian is much more straightforward. You don't have subject clitics. You have only object clitic, but in specific context. You don't have all this expression. You don't have. Why don't you have it? What is Italian lacking? Well, Italian is an Italo-Romance. Italian is the deviant one. The rest is very uniform. It's just the locus of merger, which is different. Okay, so now, let's see. Let's go back. So is this the same as Spanish? Well, Spanish has it for demonstratives, of course. Este, ese, aquel, or pronouns and adjectives. But as we said last time, demonstratives are this, that. So Abruzzese also has demonstratives. You have this demonstrative, this, that, and that close to you, and that far from both. That exists. But this is an extra set. Kushtu, kusukulu is a pronoun. These are pronouns. These are not demonstratives. These are not demonstrative. These are not adjectives. These are not demonstrative pronouns or adjectives. These are encoded on the pronoun. So now the extra problem is, an interesting thing is most of the varieties central at the border between Le Marche and Abruzzi, they also have person-oriented adverbs. So if you want to say this way, you have to say the way of me, the speaker. That way, the way of you, the addressee, or that way, far from both. So different from both. This is very common. In my variety, associ and alluci, you don't really have it. You have it a lot in, for instance, in Sora, nella ciociaria. You have these things. I remember my roommate at the university. She was from Sora, and she says associ, alluci all the time. Now, remember this. We'll get back to this. So basically, okay, we know the deixis and persona have two different features. But now, if you think for a second, okay. I don't know if I have time to go through this, but just I will go. Those of you who are not strong in syntax, just those of you who are syntactically oriented, listen to this quickly, because this is not, I don't want you to lose the track, and this is a bit confusing, but basically if you think of pronouns the cardinality and Starke way, meaning that you have a set of functional heads, one on top of the other, what is the representation of these third person deictic pronouns? Well, these are for sure, I mean, this is the first person singular, it's basically nominal, and then you have a participant. That's the basic structure of a first person singular, according to Van Koppen, for instance, but more or less this is so the same. Basically, the participant is encoded somewhere as a feature, and that's fine. But third person, we've just said, third person is no person. You can't have a participant, because third person, if you say second person, then you are saying you, you're not saying he. So you have to say he and you at the same time without saying you. This is very difficult syntactically, because as I told you, syntax doesn't understand. It is blind. So what do you do? Well, one thing is for sure, you don't say you. This is no person, because it's third person. And then you can have a locative. It is no person next to you. No person next to you sounds a bit like a ghost, but in fact it is neither me nor you next to you. This could be the idea. So you could do it with a locative. Neither me nor you next to you. If you have this structure, how is this different from possessives? How is this different from mine? My book, my book is neither me nor you, and it is next to me. Let's say in many languages, locatives and possessives are the same. So if you want to have a structure for possessives, especially in Abruzzese, where you have something really very explicitly, the possessive, you don't say the house is mine, you say the house is of the mine, next to, in my possession, something like this. So how do you do this? Well, I asked Silvia Terenghe, my PhD student, to start with this problem. 3 years ago, she decided to drop it. But if you want to know more about the way pronouns are assembled, you should read her work, because I'm just leaving this pending here. But I just want to show you what problems there are. It is not obvious how to solve them. Now, leave this. Object next to you, person next to you. This is not very easy to solve. But basically what I want to show you is that in third person, no person, you have an extra feature referring to the addressee. So referring to person, you have no person plus person, no person plus next to me. And this is, what is this other extra person doing? What is this there? Is it accidental? No, it is the same. It is the same underlying file. It is accidental. Everything is accidental in languages, mind you. But accidentally, in all these languages, we get some extra information about person, or about person and number, or about person, number, and gender. Now, the last one I want to tell you, perhaps very shortly, about the pronouns is about, I'm almost done, hanging there. Person-driven differential object marking. This is something, differential object marking is basically accusativo preposizionale. Since Bossong made this term, then we started thinking, oh, Bossong discovered this. No. This was already around in the 19th century. Diaz uses this. They call it differently, and since it's Romance and not English, it doesn't exist. But no, we found this out long ago. We know this exists. So don't be tricked by the fancy name. Fancy name, differential object marking. What does it mean? That if you have an animate object or a definite object, normally you mark it. With what? With a. That's the preposition that you usually use for the dative. There's a lot of discussion, a huge discussion about what sort of structure this accusativo preposizionale has. If you're interested, please read what Luana Sorgini is doing. That's the topic of her dissertation. She's looking at this in contact. I'll tell you next time a little bit about her results in contact with other Romance varieties. How to analyze this? It's a mess. So Luana, after 3 years, she still thinks it's a mess, and not because she hasn't looked at it seriously. It is a mess, but for our purposes, this is Spanish, very well behaved. If you want to say, today I saw your cousin, you have to say, oh, be a tu primo. Now, so vista a sorta. So vista a fratete. No, come si dice in Napolitan in agevist a fratema. More or less. Abruzzese, yeah?
Sì,
Somebody
sì,
want-
così, si dice così.
Vai, dillo tu che suona meglio.
Agevista a frate, sì.
Oppure delle volte anche aggia.
Agevista,
That
sì.
doesn't matter, the A is important.
Molto spesso accade che si usa anche edgevist in alcune varietà. Io
L'ausiliare
sento
is not relevant. What is
edge.
irrelevant is this.
Ok.
A
Sì.
fratema. A frat.
Sì.
So you say agevist, aievist, A. Okay. But if you have, I saw a book, you don't say agevist a un libro. You say agevist un libro or something like that. Now, in Abruzzese, you cannot say this. So this is, Neapolitan works more or less like Spanish, though the features triggering the difference could be, one could be definiteness, the other one could be animacy. You can read Torrego's work if you want to have a clear idea, or there was a Gigi Andriani's master's dissertation who actually looked at the differences between precisely Southern Italian varieties, mainly Neapolitan, Barese, Abruzzese, etc., and Spanish. But more or less the important thing is, if you have an animate object, you mark it with A. Now, Abruzzese doesn't work like Napolitan. In fact, you can only have this A if you have a first and second person object. So you can say, so vist a te, sind a me, so vist a vu, but not so vist a Mario. So what you say in Napolitan, this, so vist agevista a Mario, that's not fine in my variety. You can't say it. You have to say so vist Mario without a. So it is person driven. It is person driven. And in fact, every time I try to push anyone, like my mother, say, Ma, can you say this? She says, oh, this sounds Neapolitan to me. It's really, I mean, it's very clear to her that this is just not possible. It is not possible because it is person-driven. Where does this person-driven hood come from? Well, the differential object marking has an extra encoding of the person feature of the object this time. I mean, you can't explain it differently. There's no other way. If the object is first or second person, then you mark it. How do you do this formally? Well, you have to say that there's a feature that agrees with the object. I mean, the intuition is very clear. The reason why this is done is also very clear. These are the most animate according to Silverstein's hierarchy. This is in fact, I gave once a thesis to a student. She was Neapolitan, and I told her, ask people. I gave her a set of Neapolitan sentences that her mother helped, so it was real Neapolitan. And she says, ask a big population of people from Naples with high education to actually translate this into Italian. Translate these sentences into Italian. And these sentences had prepositional accusatives, so this, differential object marking. They had also enclitic possessives, so mamma, etc. Enclitic possessives, nobody transferred that to Italian. It's impossible to say mamma in Italian. When it was about these even people that knew they had to say this in standard Italian, when it was about senti a me, they couldn't find any other way that say senti a me. So they translated writing senti. They couldn't say senti me or senti me. They said senti a me. So it was brought into the standard Italian because, and always in I and you. And it was really fantastic. You made statistics. It was decaying, really following the hierarchy. So basically the most salient animate objects are first and second pronoun, of course, that are I and you, participants. If these are, normally they should be subject. If these are in the position of the object, you mark them because they're strange. Okay, this is all very beautiful, but formally, underlyingly, what does this mean? This means that there must be something that agrees with the object in these forms. Extra something. And this extra is pi. Now, this is basically a structure. Imagine I is the exponent of a definiteness feature. This means that this is the idea of torrego. This basically says that your verb, forget about these heads. This means that your verb has a definiteness feature. In a normal system like Spanish, what happens is, okay, I have a definite object. I have a definite feature. Here, there's an agreement. So when I spell out this, when I send it to PF, I see A. This is realized as A. Okay, this is the way we do it in syntax. Now, if we have an extra pi, which means this extra bundle of features that says you need to value me, you remember this is an extra bundle of features. Imagine this is a person feature for now, because it is person driven. This is that's why I called it pi, by the way, in the beginning. So subject clitics are a bit more complicated, but I know. But pi, this is a person feature. It enters the derivation here because Southern Italian dialects decide that that this pi has to be merged downstairs near the big VP. Okay, it is merged here. It needs to criticize. This means it needs to add itself up to a head that has semantic contact. In this case, this is the transitivity head. So you need to merge, you need to criticize, it needs to be remerged on the transitivity head. At this point, you have your D feature, which you had before, which says you need to add A because you have a definite or an animate object, plus this feature. This feature, it disappeared, agrees with the 5 features of the object too. This one agrees in definiteness, okay. This one has unvalued person. Where do you take your person feature from? Well, you are in the field of the object, you take it from the object. So if the object is first or second, in Abruzzese, you say, okay, this is an object. Imagine this is you. Okay, person is second. I say second, okay, very well. I get the value second. And then what happens is when I spell out, if this one is 1 or 2, then I give it A. If this one is 3 or nothing, I don't add A at PF because we have late insertion. This is a bit more complicated and you need some syntax to know this. And also the shortcut about definiteness is not licit, but this is for you to get the intuition of what happens in syntax. Syntax is blind. So you have to know your grammar decides, okay, this has no category. This is a pure person feature. Where do I put it? I put it downstairs. This is the decision for my language. This is the decision for Abruzzese. I put it down here. I need to be valued. I need to incorporate to something before I hit the interface. The moment I hit the interface, I'm going to be dead if I'm not valued. So if I don't anchor myself to something with semantics. So I anchor myself to something with transitivity, which is semantics of some sort. This little v is really another speech. Imagine that's fine. Little v is licensed. So I'm in there. What do I need to do? I need to get values anyway. So where do I get the value from? I can get it from little v that agrees with the direct object. That's the way we would do it. Or I agree myself with the direct object. What matters is the only element with interpretable person feature is the object here, because we are downstairs. The subject is far away. So I get this value from the object. Okay, so I'm happy. And then when I go to PF for the lexical insertion, when I go to phonology checks, morphology checks. Okay, is this definite? Yes, okay. Is this first person? Yes, okay. If I'm Abruzzese, then I add A. If I'm Napolitan, I don't care whether I'm first, second, or third. A will be added anyway, just like before, okay? So do you see what this extra pi is doing there? It is given an extra agreement with the object. Now, okay, we can, I think this is all. I just wanted to give you the last bit of funny data. This is a very well-known variety among dialectologists, the variety spoken in Ripatranzone. These are data I collected. This is a grammar by Maestro Rossi, who was about 90 when I was there. I don't know if he's still alive. The other person, one of the people that gave me most, and I got most recording, is now dead. This variety is disappearing. This is at the border between Abruzzo and Le Marche, of course, on a big isogloss bundle. What they do is they have gender agreement on the finite verb. So you don't say iridu. If you say iridu, if your e is masculine, iaride if the subject is feminine. And that's quite exceptional. But the reason why I wanted to tell you this is they also have agreement on the adverbs. So they have, well, not just say, Isu ha risposto malu. Le flachine, which is singular, because A is singular there, va a spasse. So the girl, le ragazze vanno a spasso. Here you would say le ragazze vanno a spasse. Or here it is la ragazza va a spasse. A spassa. So this agrees. Now, of course, this is some sort of spreading of the feature, copying of the feature, but what do you spread? Formally, you need to spread on something. If you don't have the feature to agree for, syntax, remember, syntax is blind. If you don't have an unvalued thing to value, you can't copy a value on this. How do you copy it? If you want a machine to do this, you have to give it instruction. Copy this value. So you have to have an extra feature which is unvalued, and it will get the value of the topic in this case. This language is topic oriented. Agreement is topic oriented. So it depends. Like, for instance, I killed one of the sentences that they gave me is I killed the chickens, which was very bad to use in politically correct times. But you can really see that, for instance, you say I killed the chickens if the chickens hadn't been introduced before, but if I was talking about specific chickens, then killed would agree with chickens. So it is really fantastic. It's it's disappearing. So go there now before it disappears completely. It is being eaten up by Italian, like every other romance. Okay, this is all I wanted to tell you. So these are just examples of the fact that you find magnu sembru, magne sempre. This is ciofamu, ciafama, ciafame, I don't remember, ciafame. This is really, everything agrees. But if you want to agree, you need to have something to agree, right? And what is this something? This is this extra feature. So you see it everywhere if you look for it. So I hope I have persuaded you of the fact, or it's the same. It is just expressed differently. Here it is expressed in the root, there it is expressed in the ending. So basically, Abruzzese, Ripano, they're basically the same. Ripano is next door to Abruzzese. It is just the same. It is on the isogloss bundle, but that's it. So you don't expect radically different behavior. In fact, you see a continuum, you see it. So this is all. These are some references. This is basically to tell you, remember, we started from assumptions. We saw that some assumptions were wrong based on empirical facts. So how do you account for these facts? Well, if you look, you see that there is this extra element. This extra element is a bundle of features. It couldn't exist, but it does. This bundle of features, unvalued features, basically doesn't have a place where you can merge it in a syntactic derivation because it doesn't have a category. So you don't know what to do with it. What happens is that languages parameterize its merging point. So they decide, okay, I merge it closer to the object, but then you see its effect. You see extra information related to participants regarding the object. So person-driven differential object marking, or other languages like Northern languages, they merge it upstairs near the subject, let's say. And what you see immediately extra information related to the subject. This information is extra in the sense it is additional. It is something that you don't need. You don't see everywhere. But this big Italo-Romance group all shows this additional information related to person and number in some cases. So there is underlying something I told you, it is not a very huge level of abstraction. It is one step, but this step shows many things and accounts, I would say, for many things that you couldn't observe if you didn't do some little analytical analysis. And I think this is where I want to close. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you're not dead. That's all. Okay, now, shall I keep on, shall I stop recording? Maybe I will stop recording. Stop share, and let me stop recording.